Hola. Buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I work in the development team of GeneXus as product manager, as GeneXus for SAP, and several of the projects that we have. And I wasn't thinking of making any talk this year, but I've come across several projects because I'm in contact with the SAP products, and integration is a common ground. And I started reading books about it, and well, it was clear that I had to tell you about it somehow. The idea is to tell you about what this question of the APIs economies is, to conceptualize this issue, and particularly clearly state an overview of all the things that we've got in GeneXus to work in this API economy. My goal is, my purpose is that you have clearer concepts to take back home and an overview of the things that we've been working at in GeneXus and that we've got at present to work in this new economy. Now, to start telling you about the API economy, let me go back to early last century, when Henry Ford started building the T model. At that time, the car industry was at its beginning. They did everything from tires and the wheel and the seats, everything in the factory. Some decades later, the same thing happened with IBM when it started producing its mainframe. Any knob, any transistor was made, built by IBM. So we could say that that was a monolithic economy. As time went by, consumption increased, and then there were niche players coming up. For instance, the automotive industry started becoming auto parts, and they were sold to vehicle manufacturers. And in that economy that becomes more and more specialized, we get Microsoft as a dominant player in this area, as well as Apple. Apple was one of the pioneers in microcomputers. From then onwards, we have many companies that start developing software running on the operating systems of these companies, and so we have other companies that become specialized in building or in manufacturing hardware, and that's how PCs become more frequent. Due to mass internet, high-speed connectivity with the explosion of cloud computing, we start a new economy, and that's the one that's dominating at present, and this is the service economy. 100% digital companies competing with traditional companies. It's not strange that we listen to music through Spotify, we watch films in Netflix, and we pay online and so on, or we buy online. And so we are practically at the end of the second decade of the 21st century, and we have a new economy. It's called the API economy. As consumers, we use many digital services through different apps in our mobiles, and behind them lie a very high number of APIs, like the building blocks of the Legos. And let's think that it's a piece of software that allows you to talk, or that allows different softwares to talk among themselves, to exchange information. I'm going to see this in detail later on. I think that a clear example of this question of the APIs economy is how Uber works. If you go and see how Uber works in detail, when we see that little car in our app that is moving, and we can see what way it's taking, that is solved through the API of World Maps. When we get a message from the driver, that is done through Twilio. Twilio is a company that was born 100% digital to solve communication with telephone companies through mobile companies to telephone companies. If you got premium Spotify and Uber, probably you were listening to a playlist. When you listen to the car, you went on listening to the same playlist that you were listening in your mobile. Payments are made through Braintree, which is a company bought by PayPal, and all that works on Amazon structure, which was in fact one of the pioneers to offer infrastructure as a service, and in turn it offered APIs so that we could program the behavior of that infrastructure. So the Uber model depends, the business model depends on all these ecosystems. Each one of these companies, each one of these APIs have created a company ecosystem that depends on them. If something doesn't work from any of these parts, most certainly Uber will not do well, and the same thing will happen with other companies that have generated dependencies in using these APIs. If we go back to the concept of web APIs, in fact, the concept of application program interface, we can find it in academic papers in the 60s. We generally match it with web API. Salesforce and eBay in the year 2000 were the pioneers when they started exposing their APIs so that third parties could extend their functionalities that they were offering through these platforms. So an API is a piece of software that allows me to communicate one software with another one. To that end, we have to define a contract. What information should I transfer, and what's the information that the API will give me back? It's like the glue that, without realizing it, makes things that we use on a daily basis in different applications are working. API types can be of three types. We have internal or private APIs that allows us to build new applications, to build systems. But when we talk about APIs economy, we are talking about the other two types. On the one hand, API partners, those are the ones that I expose so that a third party can use and build on them, or public APIs that provide me with public data, and you have many in the internet at present. Now, why are they so important? Why is it that we talk a lot about those things today? Please visit this site. This is an online catalog, programmable web. There were 22,000 APIs registered in the site until now. And the percentage of growth of API that have been registered is higher than in previous years. And as you can see, the graph, as from the year 2012, accelerated, steeped up. The curve started becoming very steep. And I think that the question of the applications that we use and the specialization in the use of mobile apps, the proliferation of cloud computing, and the Internet of Things has collaborated so that this growth has accelerated. Let me give you some examples so that you can see how this new economy works. What I liked is Walgreens. Walgreens is the second largest chemist chain in the U.S. I don't know if you've ever been to Walgreens. I was lucky this year to be at an event, and I went to a Walgreens. It looked more like a supermarket, but it's a chemist chain. And what they did was to open a development program for third parties, a program so that third parties could use APIs that they expose, and those APIs are connected with things that they sell in these chemists. An example of this is the service to print digital photographs. That was a business that was falling down. people don't print digital photos, and they were having bad sales there. Now, through an API, now they have a particular company. It's a mobile app that allows me to connect to my social media, social networks. I can connect, I can choose the size, the number. I select which is the branch. I get a map, which is the closest branch to me to pick them up. I pay through the app, and I know that in an hour's time I can go to that branch of Walgreens and pick up my photographs. That meant that Walgreens could go back to make a lot of money through this type of apps. And since I pay a revenue, I pay 20% commission, 20% fee for every photograph printed by a third party. That motivated the birth of companies such as Printicular in this case, and it depends on the API that Walgreens API works well. Now, if we go to the GeneXus community, I think that a very clear example is what our friends from BanTotal are doing. Marcelo was telling you a minute ago about what they did with Banco República, the state bank. For those of you who don't know, BanTotal is a banking core that has evolved in the past 20 years using GeneXus and different technologies. Is a leading banking core in over 70 countries in the world. And what they've been doing is to promote this program called BanTotal Developers. They offer third parties the possibility of being connected to the banking core through APIs. And in that way, you can expand the functionalities of the banking core through mobile apps and connect with certain banks. And this is what we call a partner API. This is something that BanTotal has been doing for quite some time. A newer example, because it started production about 2 weeks ago, I think, Alejandro, the people from NetViax developed a system in GeneXus of a travel agency, Tumbaken, to manage trips, and it developed an API to be able to to expose all the data. Mercadosviajes.uy, that was launched a couple of weeks ago, feeds from those APIs from the packages that the various travel agencies make available. You know, promotional packages, flights, promotions, hotel promotions. So we are talking about a company that is 100% digital, 100% online, that depends on the use of an API. Now, the interesting thing here is the business model. NetViax, on the one hand, offers travel agencies its management system. But on the other hand, it monetizes the use of its API. And this means that other travel agencies can use this platform and through those APIs can create new online sales channels. Also, they've solved the whole complexity of integration with companies such as Amadeus or Sabre and those who have been working in the tourist business. You know that they are leaders in this area. So we can see here an example of an API partner that allows for others to build on the API of NetViax. So if we go back to some trends, to overview some past trends, the clearest one is the concept of API as a product. And in this case that I've just mentioned of NetViax, that's a case. As an example, companies are looking at ways to get value from the data they have in their internal database. And in that way, they look for ways to expose APIs, that they present those data to third parties, and that they can, in different ways, make use of those APIs and create services that perhaps those who created the API had no idea or hadn't occurred to them that they could be created. That's from the strategic standpoint. This trend of generating APIs as a product is something that we're going to see more and more in the future. From the technical standpoint, I think there are two clear trends. The first one has to be with architecture and how we develop and expose our APIs. This is statistics taken from this programmable website. And you can clearly see that the question of their REST has been the winner. When you think about developing a web API, you don't think much. You go to this type of architecture simply because it's easy, because it's light, because it has good performance. And then the other thing is, how do I expose my API? And the standard is OpenAPI. It gives me a way of documenting, of exposing in a standardized manner the API that I would like to make available to third parties. A third issue that refers to this explosion of API is that the various providers in the cloud offer us API management solutions. Whenever you're going to expose an API to a third party, you have to be very clear, very careful about the developer experience. We need a place where we can test the API without having to write a single line of a code. When it's working, you need the API to respond in due time and form, that it responds to all calls that are made. And that's why we have gateways in these platforms that are in charge of doing all that. We have to version the API. We have to monitor it. We have to know how it can be adapted. And we also need to be able to define different policies as to how to monetize it. One way is knowing the number of calls that people make to my API. So if you're going to go into this world of APIs and you're thinking about developing an API in order to expand your system through an API partner, please read this book. This book gives you a good overview of the things that you have to take into account when you are dealing with this topic. It was written by Finnish consultants. They've been working on all these topics for a long time now. And if we had to define the term of API economy, we could see it as an ecosystem that is created around API so that it's exposed for third parties to build things. And those APIs connected with processes and internal data, internal processes and data that we would like to export. Now, what have we got at GeneXus? Well, my idea is not to go into details, but to give you an overview of all the tools that we have and that we've worked on in the past year. An important thing is that we've got the support for OpenAPI. I can easily, all the rest services that I generate just by configuring my preference through the generator, I can say that it should be exposed in this format without having to write anything. And so in a very simple way, I have the capacity to expose these APIs, my APIs in this format. We can also import APIs, import them and work with them as if it was any other external object that I can import to my knowledge data. You can also make an automatic deploy. We have an example from Holland, and we're going to be working on Azure Functions as well. And also another one related to API REST is the OData support. It's a protocol, and I think that one of the good things about OData is that you expose the data in OData and the entities behind it. So the tool that we have is that you can import an metadata, and the moment I import it, I can select, I can choose the entities I would like to bring into my model. Automatically, GeneXus would map it with a transaction. Since it's a transaction, I would work with for each. as I work in GeneXus. Now, obviously, that GeneXus, and the word I put it, its functioning will work once the API REST supports those filters that I'm declaring there. But the good thing about it is that I can import an metadata. I can work with for each, and the Nexus is the one that maps it. Now, why is OData important for us? Well, because of one of the ecosystems we've been working on for quite a while, and OData goes beyond the SAP ecosystem. This is a portal for developers where SAP publishes all the APIs that you can use to extend different products from your product portfolio. Many of them use OData as a standard protocol for this. It's part of SAP's strategy to give an extensibility mechanism and to use this standard. SAP 1 for SMEs, the latest version, the way of extensibility they are promoting is through OData. From the integration standpoint with the SAP system, perhaps you know that we've got a certified connector, certified by SAP to work with business APIs, and we can extend and develop applications that are connected to read information and to record information. And as you may have seen in Nicolas' keynotes, and Armin also mentioned it, we've just completed a project of co-innovation where we've certified the entire integration module of machine learning that we've got with Leonardo. So these tools, OData, the tools I'm mentioning, allow you to attack a number of opportunities that we have in this ecosystem for the development of applications integrated to these systems. Now, we're going to see that in the development of applications, we're going to be integrating more and more machine learning services, not only SAP, through other suppliers. Through our module, in GeneXus, we have the capacity to be abstracted from the machine learning supplier. I can have image recognition, program my application, choose Amazon for my image recognition, and I can migrate to Google or IBM without having to receive the code. And that's the advantage of the API module that we have through GeneXus AI. Those of you who went to the lab also had the chance to know that we have the possibility to retrain machine learning models, because that's where the value lies. Perhaps you're going to face very specific scenarios in companies where what you have to recognize in an image is a particular of the business, a peculiarity of the business. So this module will be added the capacity to retrain those models by making use of any or many of these suppliers. Gaston said, we are immersed in a world where the development of applications is no longer thought in having one experience, but in multiple experience. And Chatbot is fundamental. And through our Chatbot generator, we've solved it. You must have attended Sebastian Gomez talk. Tomorrow we're going to have a replay of labs in order to make a Chatbot available. I can train it through WhatsApp, for instance. And the good thing about this is that any one of us, without knowing anything about natural language processing, we can train a chat box from GeneXus. We can train the chatbot and integrate it in the development of the applications that we make using GeneXus. If we're talking about app development, we have to take into account security, which is a fundamental issue. And to that, we have GAM, GeneXus Access Management. This year, we introduced the support of SAML 2.0 or OWASP 2.0. Apart from those that we're supporting making authentication with Google, Facebook, or Twitter, we are adding very many identity providers that you can find in the world, like Office 365, Azure Seek, and so on. So we give you the possibility that very easily, through GeneXus GAM, use any entity provider. And in Upgrade 6, we are going to introduce the Apple ID, because otherwise you won't be able to upload apps to the Play Store. If you are developing apps for Apple and you have some kind of authentication, for instance, Facebook or Twitter, Apple will require you to have theirs. And so this is something that we are going to release now. And we also have APIs that solve the integration with the main providers of payments. Payment means each one of these APIs that I'm talking about appeared on the basis of real cases. It's not that we had the fancy of having a support for each one of these technologies. This has started through the need of real projects. And in fact, I've shown you the tip of the iceberg. From the integration standpoint, we have very many more things, storage provider, pulse notification, and so on. But with these tools, we would like what we always say, the question of simplifying software development so that you have everything you may need to take your GeneXus apps to this new world, which is the era that is divided by the API economy. To continue moving forward, particularly in the way of modeling APIs, we've been working on a new object, that is the API object. In this same room tomorrow at 11:45, Alejandro Paniza will be talking in detail about this new object. Now, what we want, and I think that Gaston also told you about it, is to have a way in our GeneXus model to declare how, to state how we want to expose our APIs, to state what the methods are, the data structure, that agreement that I want to make with third parties using my API, and make it independent of the way I develop it internally. What procedure I'm going to use, what data structure I'm going to use in GeneXus. So this is going to allow me to have that mediation layer that will be used as a mapping now, but will probably help me to add functionalities, as I said, related to API management. So please come to Alejandro's talk tomorrow. There is no doubt that with GeneXus and with all these tools, we'll be able to go into this new API economy. The invitation is open to all of you to continue building with GeneXus, and that's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you.